Title: While I was volunteering abroad, my stepfather called. I've sold your mountain cabin to settle my gambling debts. It's for the greater good, mine, he sneered. I calmly replied, hope it works out. He didn't understand how I could be so composed. When I returned, I revealed the cabin he thought was his. I was 6,400 miles from home when the call came in. My phone vibrated on the concrete windowsill of the community center in rural Ecuador, where I'd been volunteering for 2 months, teaching English and helping with medical translation. I'd just finished lunch, a rice and beans plate shared with a family who insisted I have seconds. Stepdad. Incoming call. I hadn't spoken to Ron in weeks, maybe even months. Not since he emailed me a cryptic, "We need to talk soon" message that I quietly ignored. But something about seeing his name made my gut go still. I stepped outside, let the sun hit my face, and answered. Ron? Hey, kiddo, he said, far too chipper. Listen, I've got some news. Go on. So, I sold the mountain cabin. You know, the one your mom left behind? My throat tightened. You mean the one she left to me? He chuckled. A full, smug laugh. Sure, that one. I had to. These debts weren't going to pay themselves. Look, it's not personal. It's survival. And let's be honest, you weren't using it. It's for the greater good. Mine. You sold it without even telling me. Told you now, didn't I? I didn't yell, didn't scream. Just stepped out farther into the sunlight, staring at the trees as they swayed gently in the distance. And I said, hope it works out. He paused. That's it? No meltdown? Nope. Huh. You're tougher than I thought. Ron, I said calmly, you have no idea how tough I am. I ended the call. No goodbye. Inside, I smiled politely as the children tugged on my sleeves, asking to play with the flashcards I brought. I stayed another 2 weeks, finishing what I'd committed to, all while quietly assembling the plan, because Ron didn't just steal a cabin. He stole my mother's last gift to me. And what he didn't know was that selling it didn't give him control. Not legally, not permanently, not once I got back. In my backpack, I carried the original deed, signed in both my name and hers, because my mother had never trusted Ron with paper, and neither had I. The return. I landed in Denver on a Wednesday. No welcoming party. No text from Ron. Not that I expected one. The air was dry and cold, and the mountains stood tall in the distance, like silent witnesses to what was about to happen. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I took a detour to the county records office. The woman behind the glass recognized my name when I handed over the property inquiry form. Oh yes, lot number 1813, right? And that was just transferred last month. Big rush closing. Strange deal. Do you have a copy of the sale? She tapped at her keyboard, then printed off the transfer of ownership form. I scanned the paper, my stepfather's signature, but there was one line he'd missed. The legal co-owner box. My name. Still listed. Still valid. Still legally binding. Ron had forged his way through half a sale. But the cabin, still legally half mine, and that made the entire transaction contestable. Next stop, my mother's lawyer. Mr. DeWitt had handled Mom's will, and he hadn't aged a day since I last saw him. He listened quietly as I laid out the situation. Then he pulled the original copy of the deed from his cabinet. Your mother made it joint tenancy with right of survivorship. That means if you were alive and listed, no one else can transfer full ownership without your consent. Period. Even if he tricked the buyer? Especially if he did. He smiled. Would you like me to file the rescission paperwork? Or do you want the pleasure? Meanwhile, Ron was enjoying his new lifestyle. I saw it on his Facebook page. He never changed the privacy settings. Photos of him in a brand new pickup truck, drinking at some casino bar with 2 guys who looked like they owed more than they owned. a caption on one post: "Don't miss what you couldn't manage. Life's too short." What he didn't know, that I'd already filed a temporary injunction on the sale, that the new owner was about to receive a certified legal notice of property fraud, that his bank account, where the sale funds had been wired, was now frozen pending the outcome of the case. Ron had taken the cabin thinking I was far away, naive, detached. But he forgot who taught me to keep records. He forgot who that cabin actually belonged to. And most importantly, he forgot I never lost things. I reclaimed them. Deal, collapse. It started with a phone call, not to me, to Ron. The buyer's attorney had received the rescission filing from DeWitt's office, along with a certified letter stating that the cabin sale was legally invalid due to co-ownership forgery. From what DeWitt told me later, the call lasted less than 5 minutes. The buyer was out. "I didn't sign up for a lawsuit," he'd said. "If the deed wasn't clean, I want every dime back. Immediately." Ron tried to play it cool online. His social media went quiet, but not deactivated. I watched him upload a photo of a drink at some steakhouse bar with a caption: "Sometimes you have to lose a few battles to win the war." Except he wasn't winning anything, because 2 days later, the escrow service froze the disbursement. That brand new truck? Bought on the assumption of money that was no longer coming. The casino weekend? Charged to a credit line that just got flagged for fraud investigation after the fake sale. I waited another 2 days before I visited him. No warning. Just pulled up in front of the house he moved into after Mom passed. He opened the door and actually had the nerve to smile. "Well, look who's back. I guess your little cabin tantrum made it through the grapevine." I stepped past him into the living room. It was a mess. Opened envelopes, crumpled paperwork, beer bottles on the floor. The TV was on but muted, some daytime rerun echoing in the background. "The sale's dead, Ron," he scoffed. "For now." I looked him in the eye. "No, Ron, for good. The co-owner box wasn't empty. My name was on the original deed. You committed fraud. You didn't just lose the cabin. You invited an investigation into every dime you made off that fake sale." "I'll fix it," he muttered. "You won't," I replied, "because there's nothing left to fix. The buyer wants his deposit back. Your account's frozen, and I've reclaimed full ownership under joint survivorship. I already filed for sole possession." He blinked. For the first time, I saw it. The shift from arrogance to fear. I reached into my bag, pulled out a manila envelope, and placed it on the table. Inside, the formal notice of transfer back to my name. Certified. Legal. Final. "You took something that didn't belong to you, Ron. I just took it back. Quietly. Permanently." He didn't say a word, just stared at the paper. "Oh, and Ron," I said, turning at the door, "enjoy your new debt. I hope the greater good can spot you the interest." The door was never closed. The gravel crunched under my boots as I pulled up to the cabin. It was just after sunrise. Light curled around the edges of the pine trees, the air crisp enough to see my breath. A thin layer of frost still clung to the porch railings. I hadn't been back since Mom's memorial, since before Ron started calling it his. But as I stepped onto the porch, every step whispered something back to me. Not grief, not rage, just peace. The lock turned easily. I never changed the key. Ron hadn't either. He never stayed long here, just like to tell people he owned a place in the mountains. The living room looked untouched. Mom's framed photo still sat on the mantel. The worn throw blanket we picked out together still draped across the couch. He hadn't made it his, because it was never his to begin with. I made tea, sat by the window, and thought about everything he tried to take. Not just the property, but the memory of it. The idea that this space, this history, somehow belonged more to him than to the woman who built it, and the daughter who protected it. But now, every log, every chair, every deed, signature, and nail, mine again. Later that afternoon, DeWitt called. "Claire, the court approved the quiet title action. You're now the sole legal owner of the cabin. Ron's name is gone, permanently." I exhaled. "Thank you." "Also," he added, "his bankruptcy filing came through. Turns out he defaulted on 3 other loans. Looks like the cabin was just the last chip in his stack." I didn't celebrate, because it was never about revenge. It was about removal, making sure his shadow never fell across my mother's memory again. That night, I lit a fire, sat wrapped in that old blanket, and wrote a new nameplate for the front gate. Just one word: Willow Haven established 1993, protected 2025. No last names, no ego, just roots. No forwarding address. The email came late. Subject line: "Let's be adults about this." I opened it, not because I cared what he had to say, but because I wanted the proof he'd come crawling. "Claire, I know we've had our differences, but none of this needed to be permanent. I was under pressure. People make mistakes. Maybe we can talk, come to some kind of agreement. There's no need to ruin a relationship over a piece of wood in the mountains. Let's be reasonable." A piece of wood. He still didn't get it. This cabin was never about real estate. It was about respect, about legacy, about the last thing my mother ever gave me. And he called it a piece of wood. I didn't reply. I printed the email, filed it under correspondence. No response needed. 2 days later, a voicemail. "Claire, listen, I'm in a bad spot. They're freezing everything. I thought the money would hold. I didn't mean to cut you out of anything. Just, please call me back." Still didn't respond, because what Ron was feeling now wasn't guilt. It was consequence. I forwarded both the email and voicemail to DeWitt for documentation. "Smart move," he said. "If he tries anything legally, this shows he admitted to everything." "He won't," I replied. "He's not trying to fight. He's trying to get close enough to beg." A week later, I saw him, by accident, at a gas station on the edge of town. Unshaven, tired, no truck, just an old sedan that looked like it barely held together. He didn't notice me. I stayed in my car until he left, and you'd think I'd feel satisfaction, seeing him like that. But I didn't. I just felt nothing, because he'd taken his shot, and I'd answered in full, not with revenge, with removal, with reclaiming what was always mine, and never giving him another chance to take anything again. The cabin stand spring came early that year. Snow melted from the cabin roof in slow, glittering streams. The first crocuses peeked through near the garden, where my mother once planted herbs she never remembered to water. I sat on the porch with a mug of tea and a stack of blank note cards. On one, I wrote, "To my future self, this was never about revenge. It was about knowing when something is worth saving, and knowing when someone isn't." I tucked it into a small box with the old deed, the court documents, and a photo of the cabin taken the day Mom bought it. That box. I locked it in the cedar chest beneath her bed, because that part of the story was finished. Ron never showed up again. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he'd left the state, filed for bankruptcy, moved into a small apartment near Reno. They said he was quieter now. Didn't talk much about the past. Didn't talk much at all. I never gave him the chance to reach me again. No forwarding address, no number, just distance. That summer, I hosted a small weekend at the cabin. Friends, laughter, a warm fire, and stories that drifted long into the night. Someone asked about the place, how I got it. "Family gift," I said simply. "Almost lost it. But some things, they're worth the fight." No one asked more. They didn't need to. As the sun set that evening, I stood by the cabin door and looked out at the land. The wind moved through the trees like it always had, and in the quiet, I could almost hear her voice. "Good girl. You did exactly what I knew you would. No rage, no fire, just a mountain cabin that still stood." Strong, silent, mine. You are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you think. Tap that subscribe button to join Twisted Justice, where we share tales that heal, inspire, and remind you that even the deepest heartbreak can lead to the most beautiful new beginning. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes it's just about getting better.